What's up, everybody? We have 10 minutes here with Adrian from the range facilities here at Vortex to discuss a little bit further in depth. We had that How to Properly Maintain Your Firearms podcast with Adrian and Pete a while back. Now Adrian's back with an AR-15 that is particularly dirty today and well used. And we're going to discuss essentially popping open the hood, if you will, and removing the bolt carrier group out of this AR and properly maintaining it. Sort of semi-live, if you will, in 10 minutes or so. Adrian, like we said, this gun's been well utilized down at the range. You have with you one punch and one BCG rebuild kit from BCM, actually, which is pretty slick here. So what goes into this kit? What do you have that we're going to be doing here?
Yeah, so this is BCM's SOP mod bolt upgrade rebuild kit. It has a new extractor spring, little rubber buffers, and 3 gas rings. So basically, all the major components you need to rebuild your bolt, keep your bolt running, which is a critical component of the rifle system, of course.
Pretty critical indeed. And how do you know at what point are you kind of thinking to yourself, I should probably start rebuilding this thing?
Well, there's a couple ways you can look at it. One is just the preventative maintenance like you do with a car.
Like a certain amount of rounds?
Yeah, exactly. Like you probably want to, replace your brake pads before they completely wear all the way down to metal.
Fair.
So, that's kind of one way to look at it, or, your tires, anything like that. So ideally,
Mark.
good idea to replace
Correct.
them before they fail. But there are some things you can do to kind of take a look at the bolt too and tell if like the gas rings or the extractor are actually worn, and maybe it's time to do some work on them.
Want to crack the hood on this thing?
Absolutely. Yep.
This is something I know that I personally do not do enough, is actually just examine the bolt carrier group. Much like I think, whereas I do like to open the hood on my car from time to time and look at what's going on, see what's happening in there. I almost never do that with my AR.
I will say the first thing I notice here is a lot of lubrication, which I know we talked about that before as far as maintenance, and lubrication is good.
Absolutely.
Yep. To what level are we going to disassemble this thing to get some of these critical components?
We're gonna take it apart pretty good here. So first thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna pop out this firing pin retaining pin.
Okay.
Firing pin drops out the back. Our bolt cam pin, we turn, pop that out, and then poof, there's our bolt. So
is that where most of the things you need to replace are in?
Yeah.
The carrier is just kind of like a big dumb piece of metal.
Yeah, for the most part, generally carrier will last the whole lifetime of the gun. The one thing I check just to make sure that the carrier key is on tight. These should be staked, these little bolts that hold it in there. But otherwise, carrier is going to hold up pretty well. Critical components we're going to be looking for are gas rings here, our extractor, and our ejector too. So our ejector is on the front of the bolt here. Ejector's
it's a little pin-looking thing down there in the
Yep, and all that does is when the round when the bolt cycles and your shell is extracted, that just gives some spring tension and pops it out. For the most part, I pretty
it's
much
on the opposite side of the extractor.
Exactly. I pretty much leave these alone as long as they are operating nice and smoothly. They're not binding. Generally speaking, I don't have to replace them.
Give it a couple test pushes with your punch. Make sure it doesn't bind up. Looks good.
Exactly. So one way to test, which I should have done before I took this apart, but one way to test if your bolt, if your gas rings are good, is the bolt is actually still assembled into the bolt carrier group, is just set it like that on the table, and if it collapses underneath its own weight, that's telling you that these gas rings are worn.
They're not making a seal.
Exactly.
Enough. Okay. So you set it down on the bolt face on the table.
Exactly.
So not the butt of the carrier, the actual bolt face when it's in its extended position. And then if it falls under its own weight, it's not creating enough of a seal.
Exactly. You can give the table a little tap, and it'll give you an idea, how worn it is. So these aren't bad by any means. So these are probably still good. But these gas rings, they act like piston rings on a car. So when the bolt is pushed back into the bolt carrier group, they actually close up like that. Mm-hmm. So
you don't want them all to be in line perfectly either, because otherwise there's a nice little crack all the way through.
So it actually doesn't matter because of that. Because when they get pushed back in, they close up like that. Yep. So the gaps are non-existent when they get back there. So anyway, continuing on, a few things that we'd want to do here. So when we clean this, I don't touch the gas rings. You don't need to. If you just wipe off the outside of them, they're fine. Every time you take them on and off, you risk bending them or damaging them. So usually just with cleaning, I don't touch those. I just leave them alone. The extractor, though, is definitely something that I'll take apart and clean here. So I
All right, just punch the little pin out.
Pop the pin out. Yep, and then here's our extractor. And, critical components of it is kind of where this where the pivot pin goes. Just make sure that's not cracked or anything like that. And then we just want to make sure that there's still kind of a sharp edge down here on the
claw.
Yeah, the claw here. Yep, which I think in a prior podcast I referred to as kitten's teeth.
Oh, kitten's teeth. That's
yes,
right. Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Now
And
it makes sense.
I definitely caught some hell for that. So, but anyways, yeah. So basically, again, these are pretty inexpensive parts. So I like to, on a gun that I use a lot, that I rely on, I like to rebuild this bolt probably maybe every 10,000 rounds.
Okay.
Just,
just for safety's sake.
Exactly. They're pretty cheap. As I said, this BCM kit is $30. Gets you your gas rings and your extractor and everything like that.
So you would replace this little rubber,
Yep.
like, I don't know, it's like the pivot pin
Yeah.
kind of pushes against that, so it lets the extractor kind of have some spring tension.
Yeah, it's just a little bushing there. Yep. So I'm actually going to just pitch that whole extractor because I have a new extractor in here.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to pull off these gas rings right away, too, because we will replace those.
You can just pull those out with your fingers?
Yeah, with your fingernails, if I can have a fingernail here, which I probably don't.
Got a knife, too.
Oh, that might work well.
So you just reach down in where the rings have their own little gaps.
Yep, and you just kind of, once you get one, the other ones come off pretty easily. But this will take up the next.
This just goes to show you, too, as well, Vortex Nation,
10
that
minutes
we don't, this isn't staged.
Yeah.
We literally brought this in and are now
There we
pulling
go.
it apart. Oh, okay, so you
it.
just kind of peeled it off the side.
Yeah, you just kind of peel it off the side there.
You didn't necessarily need like a snap ring pliers to open it up.
Nope.
You actually just kind of peeled it off.
Yeah, exactly.
Also goes to show, always carry a knife.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yep. See if I can get my fingernail on that one. I can't. So we're going to try the knife trick again here.
Also, should mention that this gun is being put back together. So even though we're using a knife to actually take it apart, we're not using a knife to cut it in half. Too soon?
There you go. Boom.
Sorry. Anyway, okay. Back to the gas rings.
Yeah.
So you got those off.
Yep.
And that only took you, I mean, even just with a little futzing, I mean, that took you
It's not
1
bad.
minute.
It's not bad. Like I said, don't take them off every time you clean it. It's just you're likely doing more harm than good.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to pop open this little kit. Try to dump those out here. Come on. It's inside another bag.
There's a bag inside a bag.
Look at that. Wow. And there we go. Boom.
There's everything.
So, yep, we got a couple little gas or 3 gas rings, all brand new. We have our extractor. We have a new pivot pin, so we'll get rid of that one. We have the little bushing that goes inside the extractor spring, which is caught on a gas ring. And then we have a little rubber donut, which just gives the spring a little bit more support, a little more tension. So,
Okay.
we're just
And those gas rings, they're all the same size. They're identical.
yeah, yep, they're
Doesn't
all
matter what order you put them on in.
exactly. Yep, they're all mil spec, and you just kind of slip them on, work them on over the edge. One, and we'll do the next one here.
Just going down the smaller diameter portion of the bolt back towards the slot that the rings sit in, and just literally just sliding them over.
Yep, just kind of loop them around. The one thing is you want to make sure you don't overlap them, crisscross them. That
Okay.
Oh,
can
yeah,
happen
yeah.
sometimes. It's kind of a small area to work with, but boom, we got them all on there. Piece of cake.
Okay.
So
Taking the extractor here now.
Yeah,
We got ourselves a spring.
yep.
Is there a small and a big end of the spring?
There is, yep. One end is a little bit wider.
Sure
it's
enough.
tapered a little bit, so you want to put that wide end in there, but you want to put your little buffer that goes on the inside, that little rubber buffer piece there.
So the bigger end of the spring is going down inside the extractor.
Correct. Yep.
And then the smaller end is going to be the end that goes inside of the rubber donut.
Correct. Yep. And sometimes this can be a little tricky too. It just needs to, it kind of snaps in there. So we're going to try to, hopefully I won't send this
Use the flat end of the
flying across
knife
the
to
room.
push the spring down inside.
Boom, look at that.
Oh, gotcha.
Right?
Just
Spring
kind of
just seats.
Yeah.
fits in there,
Clicks
I guess.
in there.
Yeah, so you don't jam it into your thumb, you know.
Throw
And
the
then
donut down
little
in there.
donut down over the top. Boom. And then we're just going to take our extractor and we're just going to put that down there.
Exactly as the old one was.
Exactly.
The pin pushed back inside. And now, Adrian,
Voila.
no pressure here. I know we did chat with you a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah.
We're a smidge over 10 minutes. But
Ooh.
I will still say, if you take out all of our chatting at the beginning and you take out the act of opening the bag, pretty much just rebuilt a bolt in 10 minutes.
Definitely.
And you
Amazing.
just slap that back in the carrier like it was with the firing pin. Line everything up.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Cam pin goes back in, or whatever that's called. Cam,
Yep.
Is that what it's called? Cam pin?
Yes, yep. If I line everything up correctly here as the clock is ticking.
You're good. Firing pin drops back down the rear end of the carrier, and then we throw the firing pin retention pin back in. Look at that. Now if you stand this thing up, that's got a nice seal to it. It's not falling down under its own weight.
Yeah. She's good to go.
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually am very surprised at how little time that took. I thought when I've heard people discuss rebuilding bolt carriers and all that stuff, I thought it sounded like a complete pain in the butt. Every time I've pulled a BCG out, I look at it like it's from outer space, but really it wasn't that complicated
Nope.
at all.
Yeah.
Not too bad. Few critical components, and as I said, replace them hopefully before they break, and keep your gun running.
It's about as easy as changing your oil.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Awesome.
There you have it, folks. 10 minutes-ish, kind of. Thanks for joining us, Adrian. Thanks for
bet.
listening, everybody. Happy hunting and shooting out there. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice.
Groovy.
Thanks, Adrian.
Awesome. You bet. You bet. My pleasure.
Perfect. Mark,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I think if I watched it done a couple times, I could do it.
Yeah.
No, you can't. That's right. I had the whole thing on video.
The nice thing is you really can't really screw it up. I mean, stuff only goes in one way. So.
Yeah, that is nice. Like,
Yeah.
I was actually getting nervous though, like you had all the old parts here, and then you kind of like dumped out the new parts.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like,
mix them up.
no.
Oh no. Sweet. Yeah. So you
So,
can feel it's
okay.
got some pretty good tension there.
it does actually.
Yeah.
It
I wish
almost
I would have felt
it almost
it
has like
before and after.
Oh yeah.
Here. Let's grab
Yeah.
mine.
Some of them that get really worn that never get fixed.
Let's grab mine.
You just stand it up like this and the bolt just goes just right down. And I mean it's like.
I mean,
super
is that
loose.
gun still operating at that point?
It depends. Probably. It's kind of weird. I mean, it may or may not. But if you get a little bit weaker ammo, or it all depends on the gun.
I'm not gonna pretend I have 10 million rounds through this gun because I don't. But this is a very old bolt. Very dry. Dry as the Sahara.
Yeah, yours looks different than Adrian's.
Look at all that carbon buildup from the suppressor.
Oh, you should have seen this before. As I said, I cleaned this one off.
Still pretty good.
Still pretty good.
That's
yeah.
probably just because I haven't put like a bazillion rounds.
And you
down it,
probably
but I was curious.
and you probably got a bunch of carbon in there holding it together too.
Yeah,
So-
actually, carbon can help seal
Absolutely.
things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean car
Oh,
engines
that's
and
my.
Whereas, yeah, all of a sudden, as soon as you make something like perfectly crystal clean, it actually is almost worse.
Yep. Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
afraid to clean my guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely on the gas ports of these guns, the carbon definitely helps seal things up there. Makes
Yeah.
them more reliable after a little bit. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.